Day 1 of the 2024 NBA Draft. Wednesday night at 7 on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
And here we go.
What do you like to do?
Oh, I don't know. Play chess. Screw.
Well, let's play chess.
Richardson gonna take off and run. He's in there! Touchdown! I-N-D-Y! Outside give to Taylor. Stretching it out. He's at the 5, and he walks in untouched. Jonathan Taylor. Turner wants to do more damage, and he does.
Here's Halliburton into the front court. Mishandled it, but gets a shot. Hits it! Hits it!
John, I have never been better to be on the air with you here in Indianapolis, a place where so many of my dreams have come true.
The Ride with JMV on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Oh, I'm so hoping that you guys had a great weekend. What a great weekend that it was. It's kind of cool when you're able to do things at your leisure and your own pace. And I will say this. We have noticed it, right? You noticed it again yesterday. You do now have a focus more in than ever before with the Indiana Fever playing yesterday at 4 o'clock. And I know that's not everybody out there. Some probably aren't so much focused in on it, but we have certainly realized around here that that is a big deal, not just around here, but then nationally. So you tune in for that yesterday and you watch it. And I told you what was going to happen. And again, this doesn't make me Nostradamus by any stretch. This is just logical thinking that basically anybody would come up with. Is that now, because you are such a major focus, you are in the spotlight, you are going to be treated unlike any WNBA team or players ever. Meaning you're going to get treated the same way for the most part, as the NBA, as you would treat the NFL or Major League Baseball or whatever it is that you watch. And what I mean by that is because nobody has truly ever really given one big fat crap about the coaching. And now after every loss, it's the coach can't coach. That's Christy Sides. After every win, it's, maybe she can coach. That is yet another reason how you can obviously see how things have been drastically different. I will say this, I've enjoyed it. And maybe I've been a little bit harsh. I think I said this a couple of weeks ago. The one thing I don't enjoy is watching 15,000 missed layups. That's the one thing I don't enjoy. It is weird because when you're watching it at this level, you just have a greater expectation because I know a lot has been made for Caitlin Clark and the turnovers, but if you're to go back and you're to watch, and ultimately this is always going to be on her because she's making the pass and you're passing to people that obviously have shown that sometimes they can't catch it or control it, or even with that in mind, control it and then convert with it. Be productive with it. So you got to put that on the passer. It's always going to be on the passer, but we watched this a couple of different times yesterday. She did make some great passes. One was an up and under. I think it was Wallace. Actually, Wallace had a couple of opportunities, and I think it was the up and under on just a tremendous half-court bounce pass. But let's face it, you knew when she threw it that there was no chance that her teammate was going to be able to convert it. You know what I mean? So it's almost like you think about it a little bit differently. At least I do. Maybe I'm wrong. But when you throw passes or make plays, it's great that she has, that sense of being in front of the play, if you will. But it doesn't work if you don't have people that can comply and finish for you. And clearly right now, there's not a lot of that on this team. And this, again, this is just something as a player that you have to learn because that is going to go on you. I think it was our good friend SPT that asked me last night, man, you got to start the show and you got to get a new coach. Normally, when you're this much under the microscope, and as I mentioned, when you're talking about this team in terms of what you might be in the NBA or any other sport, if things don't go the right way with all this notoriety, you are, as the coach, going to be the first person in trouble. The first one. That is always going to be that way. This team, for the most part, stunk a year ago. It's why they had the number 1 overall selection. They got better as the year went along, but still had the number 1. They've gone back-to-back number 1 selections. They're much better playing against teams that are like them, and that is middling to really bad in the WNBA. So when you're able to hang out in that general vicinity, then you give yourself an opportunity. They had an opportunity against Chicago, and I know a lot is made out of it because of the Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark rivalry, which I think is absolutely spectacular. I don't mind Angel Reese. I know a lot of people dislike her, but she goes at it. She goes at it. This is a great rivalry. You talk about, teams 8 and 9 or 9 and 10 or whatever. When's the last time anybody cared? I mean, hell, even when you're number 1 in the WNBA, when's the last time anybody cared at that level? But my man SPT sent me a message, I think it was late last night. Hey, I can't wait to hear you talk about how the coach needs to be fired. In talking about Christy Sides, this is all going to happen anyway if a couple of things don't happen. And that is, one, if they don't live up to the expectations, and we know how stratospherically ridiculous the expectations were for this group and this player coming out of the gate. And everybody says you got a unicorn and you got to use it. And there's no doubt about that. But it's also up to the unicorn, and it's up to the unicorn's teammates. It is. That's why I mentioned at the outset, when you give Caitlin Clark a pass for all the turnovers, and you give her a pass because there's no conversions after these great passes, I will also remind everybody, when you make those great passes, you have to remember who you're passing it to. That's part of this, and that goes with exceptional decision-making. I'll give you a great example. The only thing outside of the discombobulation offensively late, and if you really want to get on the coaching staff, that's where you go. When you're up 12 points and you lose that, and your high ball screen is looking good, and then all of a sudden, it's not like Chicago just absolutely takes that away. I mean, they really can't take everything away. Let's just face it, sometimes in watching the WNBA, and certainly these two teams, your defense may be absolutely awful, but there's a missed layup or a missed wide-open jump shot. And the Fever had a number of those down the stretch. The one thing I do look back on, everybody's going to get on her for not taking that final shot. Do whatever you need to do. But it was the play before. It was the steal. I shouldn't say steal. It was the change of possession. You know, the ball kind of rolled around a little bit and was picked up. They were down 1. Caitlin Clark got out with the ball and then went right side to that Wallace girl, and she goes in, and the outcome, she wasn't making that. It was like, it's just no, there are some of these shots they're not going to make. And this is one of the reasons I like Caitlin Clark a great deal as somebody that always hopefully has the ball in her hands, is that she normally does, especially in a secondary break situation. Like, I'm giving her grief for being way too out in front of her teammates. And while I think that's great she's able to do that, I think you also, again, have to realize who you're playing with and know that sometimes, all right, what is going to be the reasonable outcome of some of these passes? Well, you're going to get an up and under that doesn't have any rim on it. Or you're going to get a missed layup, or you're going to get a bobble out of bounds, because sometimes you're passing it to people that are very inexperienced and unprepared to get the ball in those particular situations. It's like, oh, wow, look at that. The ball's here? Well, wait a minute. And that's a part of the decision-making. And that's a part of being a rookie. That's a part of coming along and understanding and learning. That's a part about being with a team that's been very bad, really dreadful for a number of years. You love the part that where she can see. Like, all these great players are a step ahead. It's what I always loved about Larry Bird. Larry Bird, everybody always talked about Larry Bird being able, to talk junk. And the reason why, he knew he was a step and a half ahead of everybody else. So was Magic Johnson. They were ahead of everybody else. That made them great. If you look back at all the elite level great players in basketball history, most of which, unless they just had overwhelming physical talent, they were out in front of everybody else by a step or two. It'd be great to have that knowledge, wouldn't it? It'd be great to have that knowledge. But in terms of Bird, you had McHale and Parrish and Dennis Johnson. You had guys that you're going to throw to and would finish the play. One of the most famous plays, ever documented in the 80s in the postseason was the Pistons and the Celtics in that playoff game where Larry Bird got that steal. You often realize he got the steal, but the toughest part of that was Dennis Johnson making that layup. Going left side with the right hand and having that trickle in. He had guys that were able to make the plays. They knew the pass was coming. They knew the shot was coming. They anticipated a great play being made by their great player. And the same holds true with Magic Johnson and the Lakers. I'm not trying to compare Caitlin Clark to these players, but I'm trying to compare to you what she is dealing with right now compared to anybody else that may be ahead of the play itself, because we marvel at these passes, and then you kind of wonder as an end result, why they don't convert. And it's because you have to have an understanding of who you're throwing it to. And, you're only able to throw it to who your teammate is out there. And some of these passes, a full court pass to somebody has got to go right to left with a left-handed underneath finish is just not going to, I don't know who the hell is going to end up finishing that there. Some of these are great passes, but they would be great passes, and they're only great passes as long as you finish it. And they're certainly not great passes if they bounce off somebody's hands and go out of bounds. So we'll meet in the middle on that. If you're the coach and the coaching staff, could you try to find her more opportunities? Yes, you probably should, but it also is dependent upon those around her. I will say this, and maybe it's because I've watched so much of the Pacers and concentrate on what they do. Everything the Fever does takes so damn long. You ever notice that? Think about how disgusted, how frustrated you would be if everything against the shot clock took as long for the Pacers as it does for the Fever. And there's no doubt one of the quality players they have on a team is Aaliyah Boston down low. And then sometimes the Smith girl, too, is good. But, man, they take so stinking long to get anything developed. And let's just say, for example, if that's not working, if you kind of get stoned by the defense there, you're screwed. Your possession is screwed. So you look at it offensively, it just kind of seems like when they go down low especially, and people all the time say, man, you got to be able to get that and then, kick it back out for a wide open three. It's almost like they eat the ball down there. It's like 5 and 6 seconds of trying to figure out how I can get to my signature move. And at that level, you don't have that amount of time. You just don't have that amount of time. And that's why you have to have other shot makers on the floor. And besides Kelsey Mitchell, especially on the outside, you just don't have a lot of options. I mean, you watch, they'll let Erica Wheeler shoot. They'll let Wallace shoot. And then when you get down low and have an easy one, or at least at that level, perceived easy one, you gotta make it. You gotta make it. I used to tell the girls this all the time, obviously at a much lower level. I always thought, when you're growing up into that, it was always kind of like shots on goal, because girls basketball at that level, it's like one big held ball, but it's also shots on goal. So if you shoot 28%, you want to make sure you get as many up as possible, because that could still be the difference. But, the WNBA, where the quality certainly is much higher and the skill is much higher, you have to make the makeables. You do. And that's everybody. Absolutely everybody. So, yeah, it is incredible that we're talking about that in the summertime. But let me tell you, the numbers don't lie. I mentioned last week at the Italian Fest, one of my friends came up and said, man, all this Caitlin Clark and the Fever stuff's wearing me out. But you bring it up because I've been here long enough to understand that people are certainly interested in it. It is also about basketball. It's not just about the jackassery that you have to deal with on the other side of it. All this stuff, people talking about, well, this is racism, this is sexism, all it's also about basketball. We're talking about it from a basketball angle right now. That's good. This part's good. You have a nice rivalry. You've got the 8th and 9th best teams in the WNBA that get a nice plum spot at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on ESPN. You take that and you run with it. But if you're asking me, is the coach ready? Is the coach going to be the one? Does the coach need to go? If they don't live up to the perceived expectations of people, the coach will be the first one to go. And while there are a lot of things you can do differently, there are a lot of things you can do better, but the team can also help by, again, making the makeables, catching the basketball, not being completely discombobulated defensively after one defensive rotation, losing track of where you are. The consistent being out of positions and the and ones drive me insane too. So there are a lot of things that these players, including Caitlin Clark, can also do. It's certainly interesting we're talking about that, and we will a little bit more if you guys like at 239-1070. Bobby Mark's going to join me at the bottom of the hour. I'm going to present to him my plan for the Pacers this offseason and see what he thinks. I have presented it to you for the past couple of weeks. I think most people disagree. Now, most people, I think you need to trade Nembhard. I think you need to go out and you need to get a veteran presence and take care of the defense and do that. And I sit here and tell you, you sat around for how many years? And everybody talked about the draft capital that they had, and they utilized it. And you bring in your own. And I know it's all about winning right now. And if it wasn't about winning right now, I would have a different position altogether. I just happen to think this team is good and is talented enough and can get better. I don't know where this whole angle comes from. Well, I just don't think what they have right now can get better. Why? So what, you draft somebody and then the moment they get hot, you trade somebody? Is that like the Indy way here? Is that what happens? You get this tingle, you got to immediately trade them away? And I know, I sit here every day and tell you how I'm ready for teams to win and consistently be good. If this team had given me outside of defense a reason to believe that a lot that we have seen and heard about on the open market is better right now and in the future than what could be with the growth of this team, I don't want to see Andrew Nembhard do damage on somebody else's team. And flat, I don't care if the damage he did against the Celtics was at the point. I don't care where he plays on the floor. If you're good enough to be on the floor and produce on the floor, they're going to find you a spot. Everybody acts like this is the 1980s and you got a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You don't. You have players. You have guys that are getting it done, guys as a part of a rotation that are getting it done at that moment. See if Bobby Marks likes my plan or not. Is it Bryan Toporek over there, James? Correct? Did I get that last name accurate?
I think so.
You think so?
I'll have to listen to it again real quick.
I'll have to. Like me say it or Bryan himself say it?
Bryan himself say it. I sent you a clip of it.
You did? Well, I didn't look at it. I should have looked at it. I did. Toporek, right? That's what I'm going with. We'll see if that's accurate. Got an article regarding Pascal Siakam and the type of influence, the type of impact he has on the market going in here to the NBA offseason. Bryan's going to join us at the top of the hour. Stankevitz is going to be here from Colts.com. They've got a series going on with Colts.com regarding the Colts move going back to 84. Yes, James?
Bryan Toporek.
Toporek.
There you go.
Well, that's just not the proper way to pronounce that. Toporek. I like Toporek better. I think that sounds more fluid. Stephen Holder talks some Colts coming up here in the 5 o'clock hour as well. Do we not have Jack Squat to give away this week? Kidding me?
We have some tickets to give away, but we aren't giving them away today.
Some tickets to give away, but we're not giving them away today. Sounds good. I can't wait to explain it. We got a Game 7 later on tonight, too. I'm not the biggest NHL guy, but I did watch. Yeah, I know a lot of it's waiting for that Edmonton Oilers chick to unleash or release the hounds, if you will. But get a Game 7. Game 7s are always awesome. I remember I go all the way back to the Edmonton Oilers. I used to rock, when I was in high school, one of their jerseys. I think I went to the Lafayette Square, I believe, at Fanfare in the Lafayette Square Mall and wrangled an Edmonton Oilers hockey jersey back in the 80s. Yes, I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, you're just like Yari Curry. It's funny, all my knowledge, this was back when we had 4 channels like James has lived his entire life. We had 4 channels at home, and I got my sports knowledge in the morning before school. When CBS was doing whatever morning show they were doing back in the 80s, they had a sports gentleman, a sports guy known as Ray Gandolf. Anybody remember Ray Gandolf? Ray Gandolf back then introduced me to the National Hockey League. Most notably during just an incredible run in the 80s with Gretzky and Messier and Curry, that Edmonton Oilers team. But because this was also based out of New York, you got a lot back then of the New York Islanders and Mike Bossy. So I got to tip the cap to Ray Gandolf for any of this interests in the NHL came back in the 80s. With that, you have a Game 7 later on tonight between the Oilers and the Panthers of Florida. A little baseball conversation if you guys want to do that as well. I will say this. I thought Kyle Neddenrip on that tournament over the weekend, that Hughes tournament, did a great job of coverage right there. There was a hell of a lot of talent. Good for high school. I know the Mullins kid from Greenfield Central elevated his game. A lot of guys got a little bit of a look, played really well. But outstanding work from our friend Kyle Neddenrip of the Star. It's almost like we were all there. But we were all kind of poolside drinking someplace, and we weren't there. Kyle was actually doing all the work, which is pretty sweet. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, somebody posted this a little bit earlier. Robin Miller going back years in Cleveland. In that Speed Channel interview was awesome, man. I miss Robin Miller every single day. And you can kind of understand why, but certainly now it should be etched in stone. If there is a reason why that you want to see IndyCar bounce from NBC and their coverage to Fox, is because yesterday, I couldn't find it. I know it's on Peacock, and if I would just get with the times, I could find it. Finally located the race on CNBC. I didn't even know CNBC was still on. The hell is CNBC? Let's just put it on the RFD channel or whatever. CNBC. Hey, here it is right here. Well, wait a minute. It says on my guide, the Shark Tank. So New Hampshire, the NASCAR race had weather situations, and IndyCar Laguna Seca got punted to CNBC. Any of you nerds watch that? Not the race itself, but just CNBC in general. Jeez. And again, I do put a lot of the blame and certainly a lot of the focus moving forward on IndyCar. You have to have a much better, more interesting product. This is not just, well, you can't have that happen. And while you're right, then outside of the Indianapolis 500 and the 2 weeks or whatever leading up to, you have to be more interesting than that. You can't be punted to CNBC. It's a Shark Tank right here. I will say this. These guys were driving the hell all over the place. It was like me in pole position in 1982. They were driving all over the place. Monterey, California looks like a serious, cool place to live. Yeah, I can't imagine the numbers on that, too. CNBC, it was on USA, and I haven't watched USA since Rhonda and Up All Night, I don't think. It was Rhonda and Up All Night, and it was that hillbilly guy that played the horror movies. And didn't they have like a video dance show on USA? Night Flight, everybody. Yes. Night Flight on USA. And I believe that's where the WWE now resides. Is that correct? Is that on USA, the WWE?
One of the shows is on.
What is that, Raw?
I think it might be SmackDown. Let me check.
I went to, James getting all excited about that. James is going to show arousal with me bringing up the WWE. Before I hit a break, you're going to get, as we mentioned last week, the report came out, you are going to get the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, and SummerSlam back-to-back-to-back coming up next year, 2025, so enjoy that. I went to one Saturday night main event. I want to say 85 is what year that was. And a character that either would go over incredibly well or incredibly awful in this era, adorable Adrian Adonis was a part of that card. You remember adorable Adrian Adonis over there, James?
I do not know.
I'm trying to think. What do you guys think? Would that character go over well or not so well in this era? So many things have changed.
By the way, you were right. USA is Raw. SmackDown's on Fox.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, you go back to back to back with wrestling. And I've always been a big fan of the Channel 4 wrestling, the regional wrestling. That's Dick the Bruiser, Bobo Brazil, Electric Steve Regal. They're going to wrestle at the Big Red Barn in Zionsville. I've been a big fan of that forever. All right, Bobby Mark's going to join us on the other side from ESPN, the front office analyst and expert about the Pacers and the upcoming draft, and get his thoughts on that draft all together coming up, too. Matt Painter is going to join us on the show coming up tomorrow, by the way, and we'll get his thoughts on his former player, Zach Edey, and where he should be, what is the best fit for him. Matt joins us coming up on tomorrow's show. 239-1070 inside the AAA Membership Lounge via YouTube Live, the stream, the app, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
High five. Up top.
Yeah, and the beat goes on.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
James over there. I'm John. Thank you for joining us. Matt Painter tomorrow about his former big man, Zach Edey. Matt Painter, the show coming up tomorrow. Loaded rest of the way this afternoon, so don't go anywhere. AAA Membership Lounge via YouTube Live on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline right now. Only a name like Rick Smits can put one rung down on the all-time greats at Marist ladder. Our next guest from ESPN, the former front office guy, the front office expert, NBA-wise for ESPN, Bobby Marks, the pride of Marist on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Only Rick Smits, and that's only because of coming to America. That's it. Not even the Pacers, but coming to America.
You do realize I still have 1 year of eligibility to play football left, and I actually had a call. We have a new football coach there up at Marist, and I asked him on the call what would it take for him to take me back for an extra year. My boys got a big kick out of that I have to live in the dorm for a year, but I don't know if they want a soon to be 51-year-old, suiting up on that football team there.
Well, we got something in common because the new head coach at my alma mater, Indiana State, after they got poached by nearly everybody with that team they had last year collegiately, Matt Graves, their first-year head coach. I've got some eligibility left, so 54 years of age. And I'm just go hash mark to hash mark. It's no real issue right there. I mean, I can at least have somebody come out and cover me. So I've done the same thing, Bobby, right there. Some opportunities for us both to turn back the clock a little bit here.
No, I agree. I don't know if I'd make it through 2 days, though.
Yeah, well, and it's different for you doing the football thing than me. I'm just going hash mark to hash mark and going to yell help. Guard your yard like Brad Stevens says all the time. I guard my centimeter left and right, and that's about it. I'm going to give you my plan. Like, people want to see the Pacers go out and do something this offseason more significant because of the lack of defense, because of the rebounding situation. Mm-hmm. I have said this. For one, your best player, Tyrese Halliburton, cannot be your worst defender, and I expect him to get better in that capacity. But I think you get better defensively, that makes you a better defensive rebounding team. They're never going to be a good offensive rebounding team, but you get better defensively on the glass if you get better on the perimeter defensively. Thus, I don't feel the need to go out and trade good players now and what could be even better players later to bring somebody in with those two areas that I mentioned, Bobby.
No, I mean, I totally agree with you. I know there's, the history of, people get scared when we say continuity and run it back and stuff like that. And everybody always points to that Atlanta team. I think it was from 2021, where they get to a conference finals and then they pay their guys, and then all of a sudden now they're stuck with some bad contracts and they're still trying to figure it out here. So yeah, I mean it's interesting where Indiana is. Certainly the draft aside with the 3 picks, in the second round here, where. You agree to the Siakam contract, which I think it's good value. I know it's a max deal, but it's not at 5 years; it's at 4 years here. But you do have some decisions that you were going to have to make here. Certainly with Toppin, who's a restricted free agent, extensions for TJ and Nembhard. The price starts to get a little bit challenging here. That's going to force Kevin and Chad's your hand here. The beauty of it is that, we the one guy that probably can help you out the most, probably it wasn't there, was injured with Mathurin. So I think he's kind of like your ace in the hole as far as, whether it be, from a defensive standpoint or, guy to make shots here. I think we'll see what happens with Jalen Smith's player option. That gives you some flexibility to go out and make a deal if you want to, because you do have the contracts out there. I think there's like most, outside of Tyrese and Pascal, you get 12 guys making between $2 and $19 million here. So I don't think they'll be content as far as saying, we're good enough, another year, another development year, because the East will get better. I mean, the reality is that the Eastern Conference will get better with Philadelphia, hopefully, probably loading up with some guys in a healthy Milwaukee, and we'll see what happens with the New York and Miami and all the, Boston will be good again here. So But I think they're in a lot better spot than they were a year ago. I mean, a lot better spot than they were a year ago. But as you said people want, we don't want to lose in the second round. We don't want to, we want to get to an NBA Finals here. How do you go about doing it? I think certainly a little bit of continuity, a little bit of luck. Maybe there's that one player in free agency they go out and get.
So Bobby Marks on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I mention Andrew Nembhard all the time. I am willing to bet on his future being a lot higher than dealing him, for example, right now because of what we saw in this postseason and getting a player in here right now. Bobby, I'm in for the winning right now for the Pacers, but I think he can provide that both in the short and the long term. I think the ceiling is much higher than anybody thought on him, regardless of the backcourt position that we're talking about right here. Would you agree?
Oh, I totally agree. And I think that's the beauty of the draft. I think that's the beauty of the draft. I think that's, where he goes in the early 30s here. It's not all about trades and free agency here. And I think when you have, and I think we'll see that. I think we'll see that Wednesday and certainly Thursday night when we get into the second round here, where there's so much little separation. And I've been kind of beating the drum on this. Is like, if you've got a really good scouting department, you can go out and find guys. You can find better value in the draft than you probably could in free agency, because the likelihood is that you'll have that player on your roster if you hit it for 7 or 8 years. I mean, that's the reality of it here. So, yeah, I'm not ready to sell on him. I think I would certainly entertain if it makes sense on an extension. He's got a couple of years left. The last year as a team option. But here's where the CBA comes into play. Like, you might be forced to make a decision between him and TJ, right? Like, I don't see a scenario where you're paying both those guys a combined, $34 million. Let's say 17 and 17. So you have to be careful as far as, whether it be, extending both at the same time, because, then it becomes costly. Then you're in the apron. That's a conversation for another day here. That's where your picks become more value because it's that inexpensive option.
So would you say that there's been reports that they're working on McConnell longer term right now, an extension, and you don't have to do anything with Nembhard right now if you don't want to. Yep. So do you kick that can down the road with Nembhard and then go with McConnell right now? Or is this one of those tough decisions you think maybe this team will have to make?
I think it's a matter of what the cost is. Andrew's date isn't until I think July 22nd, I want to say, and he's got this year and he's got next year, which is a team option. It becomes a little bit tricky because if you don't do anything and you let the contract play out, then he becomes an unrestricted free agent after his fourth year. That's why you're looking at, and you basically replace a $2 million contract with a $14 million contract. So I think you have to be careful there. I think TJ, it's a matter of what the cost is going to be. I think how you look at putting a roster together now, it's guys are slotted. A backup point guard is probably making $12-13 million. Backup point guard is not making $18 to $20 million. Where he is with his age, he's certainly on a really good team-friendly contract. The cap's going up here, so I do think I think you'll have hey, listen, if you can only pay him, I think $4 for 78. I think that's the most here. If he comes in and says, that's what I want. Well, maybe you get that down. Maybe it's less years here. So I think in the next couple weeks here, it gives you a better understanding of what his price tag would be compared to if he was a free agent. Going out in free agency next year, I think it becomes a little bit more challenging him to earn that. He's a year older to compare to maybe what Indiana would be willing to offer.
He's got Bobby Marks of ESPN, of course, the draft later on this week. I'll get to that in just a second, but a couple more Pacer questions in the now. We mentioned tough decisions may have to be made. And you brought up Obi Toppin had a fantastic year, and I think found his niche with his role and with his team here. And then you have Miles Turner. And certainly Miles Turner has been made better because of Tyrese Halliburton. We've documented that with one another before. Might we see with Obi a shorter term right around the corner, tough decision that needs to be made, and then a little bit longer term later on this year, a decision the Pacers will have to make on Miles?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of what does Obi want, right? I mean, you signed Siakam to this 4-year deal. He's your starter. Obi's in the role of sixth man. The guy in the role of a sixth man is not making $20 million a year. I've kind of pegged him as a $13-14 million guy based on where his role is. Would there be a team coming in with cap space to give him an offer sheet? We'll see about that. That's the hard. You got Jarris Walker, who you drafted in the lottery last year as a kind of a big forward that maybe he can replace him. So yeah, I mean that's the hard decisions. Then Turner, who's got an expiring contract, then $19 million deal. Is he going to want? I mean, he's going to want a big contract. Next offseason, the inability to give him an extension right now here. So eventually, although you get to an NBA, you get to a conference finals, and you say, oh, the window's open. Yeah, the window starts to shut a little bit here because, as I said, you have to make some of these tough financial decisions.
Well, think about it in terms of Miles. People say all the time, well, this is how you do it this offseason. You get rid of him, and then you bring somebody in that can get you better all-around rebounding. And then I have to remind people that this offense doesn't work. I mean, there's no more pick and pop with Isaiah Hartenstein, for example, or no pick and pop with Isaiah Jackson. Miles helps make this offense be at its best, and I don't think, Bobby, you can afford to lose a lot of what they do offensively, believing that you're going to improve that much on the rebounding side of things.
No, I agree. I mean, that's where it's like, are you more content maybe giving some of what you would give Obi and more towards when Miles becomes a free agent. That's if Obi gets a contract, it will be without being moved next year. It presents a problem as far as retaining him.
So Bobby Marks, who joins us. One final thing I want to get to Zach Edey, your thoughts on that before we close. People often bring up to me Mikal Bridges, and I love him as a player. He can do so much for you both ends. Am I wrong about this? When I have a vision of, all right, you can't go out and spend that much on him in terms of personnel and what you give away, can Benedict Mathurin at least be in the neighborhood of a player like that? Or do I just have a lot more thought on his game evolution, I should say, for the better than anybody else does?
Oh, I think he definitely can. And you know what happens with guys like Mathurin, who we haven't seen since I think March, right? When he got hurt, March or February, when he got hurt, you forget how good they are. Right? I'm not putting him in the Kawhi Leonard conversation, but that's how what Kawhi was back in 2018 when he didn't play for San Antonio. And then he goes to Toronto and be like, man, this guy's pretty good. I'm like, yeah, just because he hasn't played the last 4 or 5 months here, he's still a good player here. So I told, as I said, he's my X factor here. He's the X factor as far as, where this roster goes.
I think that right now, and see, you mentioned the term run it back, and people freak out around here because the Colts have said that before, and the results haven't been there. But I have a belief in I can't imagine Mathurin, Bobby, coming out, and he's already the most motivated, headstrong dude anyway, and then having to sit and watch his team have that success and make that Eastern Conference run, how motivated he is going to be even more so than usual upon his return. That excites me a great deal. It does.
No, I agree with you. And I know, as I said, we started the conversation, and I said, yes, when you say run it back, it does freak people out because some people do like change and continuity, gets stale sometimes. But I just think in the day and age of where we are with this collective bargaining agreement and how rosters are put together, I think Indiana is in a really, really good position here. And if you do something and you move off a guy and, now you got to pay that guy or, maybe he doesn't fit your locker room here, I think you have to be careful with that.
In closing, we found it with Trayce Jackson-Davis. The whole night didn't go well for Trayce, and we've talked to him before about it, but, man, his landing spot was as good as anybody could have asked for. He could have planned for in Golden State, and we saw that with his season as a rookie with the Warriors. What is the best landing spot and the most logical place for Zach Edey to end up the two-time player of the year in college basketball coming up later on this week?
I think a good spot would be certainly Memphis. They're at 9, so you're looking at him playing with Jaren Jackson Jr., which is certainly intriguing. I think 15 is Miami. Can he get to 15? I don't think he makes it to 15 there. So you've got Bam there. Certainly you could possibly play those two together, or he comes off the bench for you. you've got, we're in the first, San Antonio at 8. That's a little bit of a stretch. Certainly with
How about Toronto? That's like at 19, but a little bit lower, and obviously he's Canadian.
So that's where, I think we always get caught up on where guys get drafted, certainly in the second round. If you get picked at 31 or 40 or 50, sometimes it's about finding the best fit. I always tell these draft prospects, once the draft night's over, like, who cares where you get drafted? You're all on equal footing. Toronto would be, they got Pirtle there. I would say first-round picks are usually on the roster longer than the players that you come in who's ahead of you on the depth chart here. So, but it's hard for me. I think he goes in the lottery. I think it's certainly what happens with Klingon certainly will make an impact. But it's hard for me to see him, getting past 14.
You think he can be a productive NBA player if
I
given
do.
an opportunity?
I think this is the draft of the center, right? I mean, we could see 7 or 8 centers picked in the first round here, which is, we went from talking about positionless basketball, 6'8", 6'9" guys, length, 3-and-D guys here. Now we're kind of, going back to, more of a kind of a traditional center.
It's funny. I kind of use that as a crutch, though. I tell everybody around here, it doesn't matter where Nembhard is. Just put him in. He's going to produce positionless basketball. And then when defending Edey, hey, you know what? Yeah, the center may be coming back. So I use that argument for whatever best suits me at the moment. You know what I mean?
I totally agree with you.
All right, man. Where's your place coming up later on this week on the draft nights?
Well, I'm in Brooklyn. I was in LA last week for TV. Now I'm in Brooklyn, and we've got a preview show Tuesday night. We've got round 1 on Wednesday night, so I'll have draft coverage Wednesday night. We've got the second round, which is a little bit different than years past, on Thursday night at 4:00. And then, man, we jump right into free agency again. So it's a busy next few weeks.
All right, I will tell you this. Friend of the show, Chad Buchanan, seems to like my basketball ideas, but I think he's kind of jerking with me a little bit.
Listen, as long as you're not getting on the soapbox saying like they got to trade everyone for Paul George or something like that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
well, I had to fight that off already around here, so I had to fight it.
You've already done that. You've already been through that. You don't need to go revisit that again.
Anytime one of these guys does a podcast or whispers in somebody's ear on the floor, then I have to fight those rumors.
It's funny. It's we put out the article today on the apron rules, and we put out slides and examples, and I got to put a video out, and I feel like I'm like the apron police. I'm throwing cold water on all these fantasy people who want to put make believe trades together and stuff like that. I'm just like saying, these are the rules. I'm just explaining you what the rules are. So when you're trying to do something that makes no sense. That's why you can't do it.
Oh, it's Bobby Marks, always really good, and thank you for joining us. You can find him at Bobby Marks 42. He's the front office expert for the NBA for ESPN. Catch him later on this week. We'll do it again soon when we start to figure out, I guess, this offseason for the Pacers a little bit.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks, Bobby.
Sounds good. Good talking with you.
It's Bobby Marks on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Let us take a break, and we shall return. I love it when the guests completely agree with me. Now, do you? 239-1070. Your thoughts on the other side. More guest content also on the way. Red Hot Monday in Central Indiana. It is NBA Draft Week. Matt Painter on the show tomorrow. You and me next. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Hey, this is Lisa Stofan. Heard the market.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, it was good stuff with Bobby Marks. Podcast 1075thefan.com. All right, Bryan Toporek. Toe, as in big toe, poor Rick. Toporek of Forbes regarding Pascal Siakam and the path that is now going to be presented because of his deal here in Indy, which Bobby Marks had mentioned and others have as well. Seems to be pretty friendly considering it's a max deal for 4 years. Not change anybody's mind, anybody out there that thinks you got to do something. And believe me, they're not nearly where you need to be. And I understand that you also factor in the teams that they beat had to deal with injuries. I just also believe this team is going to be better. These guys are going to be better. And I for one, cannot wait to see them unleash Benedict Mathurin. And the other thing he agreed, when you talk about Mikal Bridges, you got to do whatever you have to do to get him and bring him in. And, oh, he's 3-and-D and blah, blah, blah. Why can't Mathurin be that? Why can he not be that? And I don't think it's going to take, he's not going to be Mikal Bridges right now. Don't get me wrong. But why does that not work now and then even longer term with what he does? Believe me, they have to be good. They have to be deep playoff worthy again coming up this year. But there's nothing wrong with when you draft guys, keeping them because they're good. And then figuring out where to play them. And I know that's beneficial to my argument. I talk about positionless basketball in terms of the Pacers, and I talk about, well, you know what? Position basketball with Zach Edey. But I believe in Nembhard. This whole 1 and 2, my ass. No, he's a good, productive basketball player, and I believe it. He is a savvy veteran scorer, and he's not a savvy veteran yet. And somebody gets good. You got to run and trade him. Got to run and trade. Got to listen to everybody's offer. Of course you're going to listen to everybody's offer, but you don't have to follow through with it. Bryan Toporek. No. Toporek. Gosh darn it. Toporek. I'm going to write that down phonetically, and I will not miss a beat coming up here at the top of the hour. Stankevitz, I've got that one down for a number of years from Colts.com. Stephen Holder, ESPN at the 5 o'clock hour. Matt Painter's on the show coming up tomorrow. The Corner Bar on Friday. I cannot wait to go. I've never driven by that place, and the parking lot and the place is not absolutely packed. That's a Southside Perry Township establishment. Long time. The Corner Bar on Friday will be a blast. Quick one. We'll come back. Hour 2. Don't go anywhere. The AAA Membership Lounge via YouTube Live. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. I think most people around here are cool with that length of time, given his age at 30 right now. What do you think overall? And then how do you think that could ultimately help, I think, maybe not completely change, but adjust the landscape moving forward this offseason?
Yeah, well, overall, I mean, I don't think anyone's surprised that Siakam's coming back to Indy. I don't think they would have made the trade if they thought he was a real flight risk, and then obviously had a ton of success there, go on to the Eastern Conference Finals. Both parties very much made it clear that they wanted to stay together after that run. I think the surprise was that it was only a 4-year deal instead of a 5-year deal. He was eligible for 5 years. I believe about $245.3 million. As you mentioned, he's getting only the 4, no team or player option in that as well. So just guaranteed full 4 years. And given his age, he's moving into his 30s. Maybe Indiana was slightly nervous about giving the full 5, but typically a player wants as much commitment as possible. So I think this might be a reflection of just the new landscape that we're moving into, where the NBA is finalizing these new national television contracts, and there's going to be a ton of money flowing in over the coming years from that. So it wouldn't shock me if we start to see more guys preferring slightly shorter deals and being able to test free agency again a little bit sooner, because Siakam still might be able to, after this contract expires, he might still have a chance for one more pretty sizable contract.
This is Bryan Toporek of Forbes Talks NBA has that article regarding Siakam. He's with us via the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. So where is he as far as production at this portion in his career as he gets this extension, big money with a team that certainly has a high level of expectations here in Indy? Where is he in your thoughts as far as his game compared to where it has been and compared to what you think it's going to be over the time of this deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think, given his age, he turned 30 in April. It's hard to project significant room from growth moving forward. I think he largely is what he is at this point, but that is a very good player and all, 2-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA, played down an NBA champion and was a key contributor on that team. So I think, he showed throughout the playoffs this year was an excellent fit with Tyrese Halliburton in particular. And I think the Pacers are rightfully very excited about what those two can be moving forward. I think it's a reasonable deal for Indy to make. I think we'll see what they do with the rest of their roster and how they continue to build around Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, he's still the focal point of this team, but Siakam, based on his skill set, is honestly a great fit with Halliburton moving forward. So I completely understand why they did the deal in the first place, why they traded for him in the first place, and why they were eager to recommit to him this summer.
What's this offseason going to look like with deals and the length of contracts, obviously, and the dollar amounts? What are some of the things that excite you about what you believe is going to happen coming up this offseason?
Yeah, it's good. It's hard to predict right now, honestly. It seems like it's going to be pretty active. I know a lot of the major insiders, and we had Bobby Marks on earlier, and his colleague Brian Windhorst of ESPN is kind of suggesting trades are going to be more of the big explosive deals than free agent signings. We have the potential of LeBron James becoming a free agent, but he's widely assumed he's going back to the Lakers. Paul George can become a free agent, and it changes by the hour with him in terms of what he's expected to do. But other than that, guys like Trae Young, Brandon Ingram, Zach LaVine, all of these names, Jimmy Butler, have all been thrown out as potential trade candidates. I think I would guess Bobby Marks is far more of an expert on this stuff than I am, but this new collective bargaining agreement that went into effect last year contains some really strict team building penalties or restrictions for teams that go way over the luxury tax. So I think we're going to see some teams looking to either shed money or at least be more mindful than they have in the past. We're not going to see the teams like the Clippers and the Warriors who rack up these 9-figure luxury tax bills and don't bat an eye at it. We've already heard the Warriors say they want to get possibly below the luxury tax this year, which is they've had literally a 9-figure tax bill for each of the last 3 years. So it wouldn't shock me if we see more deals like what we saw last summer with Atlanta, where they moved John Collins to Utah for Rudy Gay, who was an expiring contract, only a second-round pick. Was not a ton of value for John Collins, the player, but it was John Collins, the contract that they were just trying to get out of. And I imagine we're going to see at least a few deals like that.
So tell me this, Bryan. Is there a player in a destination, even if it seems a little bit far-fetched, but a player that either has availability or may become available that is a tremendous fit, for example, with a contender as of right now in the Eastern Conference? And Paul George's name has been tossed around a lot. Mikal Bridges' name's been tossed around a lot as well as far as trade opportunities might be concerned. But is there a player and a fit someplace, and we'll start in the Eastern Conference, that you think may be too good to be true for a team?
Yeah, I wrote about George with regard to the Knicks a few weeks ago, and I think that makes the most sense. Honestly, if he's choosing between staying with the Clippers, joining the Sixers, who can sign him outright, or the latest speculation is he might pick up his player option and try to get the Clippers to trade him somewhere, basically saying, I'm willing to pick this up and you can trade me to this team. And if not, I'm going to opt out. I'm going to leave you in free agency. You're going to get nothing in return for me. So there is something to benefit you if I pick this option up. I think the Knicks, they can get to his salary fairly easily with Julius Randle and Bojan Bogdanovic. They have plenty of draft capital that they could include as well. I don't think they would have to give up the typical trade package, 5 first-round picks and 3 first-round swaps or whatever to get him, because George has leverage over the Clippers with the potential of him becoming a free agent. So that's the one. I don't know if the Knicks are interested in that, if they're turning their attention elsewhere. It wouldn't shock me if they're just so happy with how this past season went that they just want to kind of run this core back, reintegrate Julius Randle, who missed this entire postseason run, and let's see what happens there. But I kind of think this is the offseason that they need to make a big move, because Jalen Brunson, unless he signs an extension, can become a free agent next summer. Randle can also become a free agent next summer. Bogdanovic's contract expires after this year. So really this offseason is their one chance, or this season. I mean, they could do it by the trade deadline, but this year is their one chance to use Bogdanovic and Randle to get a big upgrade. So whether it's George, whether it's Jimmy Butler, I think that's the move I'm at least nervously eyeing if I'm an Eastern Conference contender, not in New York.
He is Bryan Toporek, joins us, Bleacher Report and Forbes Sports on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. You mentioned the Knicks, and of course the Pacers in 7 games of the Eastern Conference semifinals beat them, with that decider being on the road at Madison Square Garden. Mitchell Robinson trade rumors you see because they want to bring back Isaiah Hartenstein. Isaiah Hartenstein on the open market right now. What is his value? Because obviously on the glass and defensively, he was really good against the Pacers. Those are two things they don't do that well on the glass with the Pacers in mind here. You think his value is a little bit overblown, or is that his relative value with the Knicks alone that is legitimate and why they want to bring him back?
I think it's a little bit of both. The Knicks are limited in how much they're allowed to offer him. It's around 4 years and $72 million. I forget the exact figure. So I think if a team is trying to acquire him, they know they have to outbid the Knicks, or they have to go over that amount. I don't know if he's going to get another 4-year deal, like a 4-year $90 million deal, 4-year $100 million deal for anyone. It wouldn't surprise me. I know he's been linked to Oklahoma City Thunder a lot. Maybe they do a shorter-term deal but a higher annual salary, and then he has to decide, do I take that and then I can test free agency again sooner, or do I just take the $72 million from the Knicks? And it worked out for me. It was a great fit for me the last couple of years, and maybe they move on from Mitchell Robinson, open the starting job full time for him. So there was a lot of smoke with OKC in particular a couple weeks ago, but it seems to have cooled off a little bit since they made that Alex Caruso trade last week. So it's hard to say because I think there could be a lot of centers on the move. Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports reported last week guys like Clint Capella could be available. It's hard to kind of find a landing spot for Jonas Valanciunas that makes sense. He's a free agent, not expected to return to New Orleans. So there might be kind of a logjam with centers who are available, and teams can kind of pick and choose which is the option that fits best for them with the contract framework in mind.
Hey, Bryan, you also had a story, and I'm kind of curious how all this is going to work out with Klay Thompson, because it's really weird to think of Klay Thompson being someplace else other than Golden State. Where do you think that is right now, and what is the ultimate impact that you see where he ends up as far as the offseason is concerned?
Yeah, it sounds like the Warriors are being, kind of what I said earlier, they're being mindful of all these new rules. They really do not want to be subject to the repeater tax and the second apron especially, which just really restricts the types of moves you can make to improve your roster. I think they didn't even make it out of the play-in tournament this year, weren't very far above 500 this year. Like, they know that they have a lot of work to do to become a real contender again around Stephen Curry. So I think they want to go very short term with Klay Thompson. Shams Charania of The Athletic back in December reported they were offering somewhere in the range of 2 years, $48 million, and Klay Thompson was hoping to get 3 years, maybe 4 years. I don't know if he's looking for even a higher salary than that annually, but seemed like there was a pretty big gap in negotiations. And then his colleague Anthony Slater of The Athletic reported over the weekend that there isn't even an offer on the table from Golden State, not a 1-year deal, 2-year deal, nothing. So it seems like the Warriors are at least exploring their other options, is what Slater said, and then they've kind of put Thompson on the back burner. I guess the question is, does he have another landing spot that makes sense? I think he's been tied to Orlando the most. I think Philly would be another option for him potentially if they strike out on all their big targets, but it wouldn't shock me if he's still kind of getting these 2-year deals. I would imagine it might be a 2-year deal with like a second-year team option or a non-guaranteed salary, partially guaranteed salary in the second year of his deal. I think for these guys in their mid-30s, this is potentially at least one major change to track throughout this CBA is whether these guys who, 4-time champion, 5-time All-Star, multi-time All-NBA guy, you typically think of, they're no-brainer max or near-max players throughout their career. And obviously Thompson's had a couple of major injuries, is starting to slow down. So I don't even think under the previous CBA he would have been a max guy, but it seems like he's being squeezed a lot more than he might have been expecting, a year or two ago.
Bryan, I also wanted to ask you regarding Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin here was a fantastic fit. Once they found that fit coming off the bench, he's a restricted free agent, and all it takes is one team that has some cash to spend and thinks, all right, here's more clock for you, here's some starters minutes for you. Yeah, and I saw a video of him in a dunk contest with LeBron James, which I think has been relatively recent, and you always kind of wonder about J.J. Redick and Rob Pelinka and what now is going to go down if LeBron James is indeed back in L.A. What type of restricted free agent market outside of Indy would Obi Toppin have?
Usually restricted free agency works very much in favor of the teams because teams have to tie up their cap space, and I believe the new CBA shortened the amount of time that they do, but you still can't even sign a guy until after the moratorium's over on July 6th. So you basically have to sit out the first week of free agency, or for however much money you want to spend on Obi Toppin. You have to keep that reserved for the entire first week of free agency. And I would just be surprised if he was any team's number one priority, or if he was, I would imagine it would be with some sort of exception, like the $12.9 million non-taxpayer mid-level exception, probably at best. So it wouldn't shock me if he's back in Indiana on a somewhat team-friendly deal, just because I don't see what team is like banging down the door to sign Obi Toppin to some monster contract in restricted free agency.
I've often wondered about this around here because they being the Pacers may prioritize some situations more than they do Obi. And I know that they like him a great deal. I know Pacer fans like him a great deal, but it's almost kind of like I wonder if the Pacers are hoping somebody takes a kind of a wild-ass shot at him, Bryan, and brings him in to take some of that decision-making pressure and add some more financial flexibility to their situation, considering Jarris Walker, was sitting back there and going to get some playing time or whatever. I want him to come back. I do. I've often wondered if the Pacers wouldn't mind seeing a team jump in and offer him money that he just, in a situation he just, he cannot not do in this situation, considering the offer to take a little bit of the pressure off them. I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I could, a sign-in trade could be on the table as well, but I think you're absolutely right to point out, they've got Jarris Walker waiting in the wings. It doesn't make a ton of sense to keep loading up at the front court when you've already got Siakam and Miles Turner locked into the starting 4 and 5 spots. So I guess one option beyond the sign-in trade, they could basically do what they did with Bruce Brown last offseason and give Toppin maybe a shorter-term deal but a higher annual salary, and then treat him as, basically I call it a human trade exception, but, he would be the main salary going out in a trade mid-season that they were hoping to swing. I don't know if they're going for a third star or anything like that, but if they're looking to round out their roster, do like a similar thing with the Klay Thompson, a 2-year deal, second year is not really guaranteed or lightly guaranteed. That way the team that acquires him can still have the flexibility next offseason if they want. And that way, you're not losing him for nothing necessarily, but you at least aren't committing to him long-term either.
Hey, Bryan, in closing here, where's Paul George going to end up?
Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, it really seems like the Clippers are not moving off of this 3-year, $150 million offer that they gave to Kawhi Leonard back in January, and I don't totally blame them for it. I think they're another team that's being mindful of all of these new rules, and they don't want to just hand out 4-year max deal willy-nilly. I would imagine the Sixers, if he does turn down his player option and become a free agent, they have all but telegraphed, we will give you the 4-year max deal if you want it. So is Paul George willing to take that, or is he willing to take less money to stay in LA? And then, as I mentioned, the latest reporting is that he's at least considering picking up his player option, which would widen his options considerably. There are a lot of teams that can't acquire him via sign and trade because of all of these new rules. Teams over a certain amount of money are not allowed to sign and trade for players. So a team like the Knicks might not be able to sign and trade for him, but if he picks up his player option, they would be able to acquire him that way. So I think that's a team to keep an eye on. I haven't seen a lot of Paul George, Oklahoma City Thunder connections, but
again, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he played there. He had one of the best years of his career there. And I mean, can you imagine a starting lineup of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Alex Caruso, Jalen Williams, Paul George, and Chet Holmgren? Like that's terrifying. I think OKC is probably being a little more focused on the long term. I doubt they want to give up a ton of assets for a 34-year-old. So it might not be a realistic option, but that's one I would at least keep an eye on as a possibility. I know there's been some Golden State speculation over the last day or two, so it would be tough for them to pull off. It would require basically Klay Thompson's gone, Chris Paul's gone, but I guess it's theoretically possible. My guess is he stays with the Clippers, and this is all just a month or two of, these two having a staring contest, but anything is on the table right now. And I honestly, I think if his decision of whether to opt in or not is going to be the big tell. If he does pick up the player option, I'm guessing he's gone.
Bryan Toporek, who covers the NBA, courtesy of Bleacher Reports and Forbes Sports, has a very interesting article regarding the Pacers and Pascal Siakam. You can check it out right there, his social media platform on X, and obviously, again, with Bleacher Report and Forbes, he's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Bryan, I appreciate it. Enjoy the week, too, with the draft, and then obviously what happens in the NBA offseason forthcoming. We'll do it again soon.
Thank you. Anytime.
Bryan Toporek right there on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. We got a Game 7 tonight in the NHL. Got a Game 3 tonight in the College World Series with A&M and Tennessee. Edmonton and Florida. So a hell of a night all the way around. I watched some soccer. I love watching Team USA soccer when they're playing the world. In this case, in whatever the hell that is, where they played Bolivia yesterday. But it is fun. What else I watched yesterday? I watched some of Scotland and Hungary on the Euros. Yeah, Germany and Switzerland. At Croatia right now in the 66th minute. 1-0 over Italy. I don't know if that's an upset or not, is it? Love live action in the afternoon, and you have a couple of decisive game matchups in the NHL and in the College World Series coming up later on tonight. JJ Stankevitz of Colts.com writes about the here and the now of the Colts, but also is looking back on the path to get here, the thereafter. Yeah, I've got a lot of input on that, but I do want to help JJ promote something they're doing at Colts.com. We'll do that coming up on the other side. Stephen Holder talks Colts NFL as we move closer. I think inside now a month until the start of training camp. And believe me, it will be here before you know it. And cannot wait. Although you want it to go slow because this is the time of year where you want the clock to slow down so you can enjoy the summertime a little bit more. Stephen Holder coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Corner Bar coming up on Friday, as I mentioned, too, in more ways where easily you need to hang out with us. We're talking about, brought to you by Franciscan Health, the Fan on the Back Nine Golf Tournament, July the 18th. And for those of you out there that play pickleball now, we, along with 93 WIBC, have a tremendous event, a tournament for pickleball. And then you have to play me in one-on-one, and then I beat your ass. No, that's not how that goes. A tournament in pickleball that we'll talk about coming up as well. So we are not short of opportunities for you to hustle out and to join us. Tell you about that coming up before the end of the show. And a shout-out to everybody on Saturday night. I mentioned this on X yesterday. It was a record breaker. Saturday night was incredible. I could not keep up with the number of calls, and now we are solidified certainly around here, but starting to get, I don't know if people drop in, B105.7 and the JMV takeover into various websites or Facebook pages or Facebook groups or whatever. But I'm getting more and more calls from outside the state of Indiana. It has been a hell of a time, and it was a record breaker on Saturday. And a shout-out to our good friend Darnell. Our good friend Darnell donated some Janet Jackson tickets. Of course, it was Janet Jackson and Nelly last night at Cambridge Fieldhouse, and we gave those away to a big listener of the JMV Takeover on Saturday night, and this mother absolutely enjoyed it. Loved it. So that's what we do. More concerts coming up, more tickets coming up as well. I know a lot of you that won Counting Crows tickets enjoyed those last night at Ruoff Home Mortgage Music Center with the Counting Crows. On Saturday, Maroon 5 was there. You guys also won tickets from us. Big time summer around here. And more chances for you to join us, not just me, to all of us here at the Fan. That JJ Stankevitz, Stephen Holder still to come inside the AAA Membership Lounge via YouTube Live, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Roto-Rooter.
Plumbing problem?
107.5 The Fan.
I was looking at the, I don't know if you'd call it mid-summer because we just started summer. The mid-schedule, if you will, maybe. Somewhat early portions of the schedule are Ruoff. Thursday, Tyler Childers, who's that? Mule Pull 24 Tour. Sounds like a country guy to me. Tyler Childers. Dave Matthews Band in for the weekend, the 28th and 29th. I know you guys all love that. Kids Bop Live. That's Friday the 5th. Third Eye Blind and Yellow Card. The 6th. Train REO Speedwagon. By the way, and this is kind of left out, it's going to be tough because normally these guys go for 2 hours and you love it. But Yacht Rock Review will open up for Train and REO Speedwagon on the 10th. And I think they get about 45 minutes. They will leave you wanting more. I know most of you love Yacht Rock Review around here. And again, it's cool that they're on the road with Train and REO Speedwagon. We love Kevin Cronin as much as Kevin Cronin loves us here in Indy. But, man, Yacht Rock Review with only 45 minutes, going to leave you wanting more right there. Should be nice. JMV, the WWE events aren't back-to-back-to-back. WrestleMania could be in 2031. Is that true? Just the Royal Rumble is next year. Well, hell, 2031. What is that now? 7 years away? Can't be that. God, I'll be 61. There's no way I'm going to be here. No way. Life I'm living right now, James.
So according to ABC, the Royal Rumble will be held February 1st, 2025.
Correct.
2-night SummerSlam and 2-night WrestleMania will be held at Lucas Oil in future years.
Future years. Son of a... Why don't you just do that back-to-back-to-back and have some fun with it? The hell?
They may have already scheduled.
The hell, Triple H? Who's doing that? Triple H? Well, Triple H is back-to-back-to-back with an H. Go back-to-back-to-back with this. Have some fun. Hey, by the way, and a shout-out to the Indiana Sports Corp and Indianapolis for a great swimming trials down at Lucas Oil Stadium. What a great week that was. And they have already drained the pool, just like they did in Caddyshack when the Baby Ruth got loose. I want this pool clean, sterilized. It's awesome. Nah, good week, though, it really was. Andy Moore, Automotive Group Hotline, Colts.com. Friend of the show, you hear him on the Colts pregame show coverage with us during the course of the season. JJ Stankevitz joins us. Hello, JJ.
JMV, good to talk to you.
What'd you do? Did you go down to any of these swimming events?
You know what? I wasn't able to make it down, but my wife went down, and she said it was one of the coolest things she's ever seen in that stadium. I mean, and just like Indianapolis, like what a heater this city is on right now, from the NBA All-Star Game and all the events that went on, including at Lucas Oil Stadium, to getting, the Pacers playoff run, to Caitlin Clark, to the Indy 500, now with the swimming trials. Now we get, whatever the wrestling stuff is next year. And then in between all that, we get the Colts season that has a lot of hope and a lot of potential with Anthony Richardson. Man, what a time. What a time in this city.
Well, when are we ever going to be, and I've said likely once I'm dead and gone because of all the new stadiums and certainly the hub being in Southern California there now with SoFi, but let's just face it, this market, this place deserves another Super Bowl with the way that they perform their one and only time. And hopefully, some of the nerds can wake up and understand that, and before I'm out of here for good, we can get another Super Bowl around here.
Well, anyone who comes through Indianapolis, you might come here being like, what's there really to do in Indianapolis? And people who leave are like, man, that was great. I'd love to come back here. This is one of the great event cities in the United States. And it's so cool to see how the city and, everyone involved just puts these things on and how seamless they are and how successful they are. And it takes so many people who do it, who've made this kind of their life's work for this to be the case, where I think a lot of people view Indianapolis as like this city punches above its weight when it comes to putting on events.
I've said this all the time, too. It's comparable to me when people bring up Indiana State and Terre Haute. Yeah, man, I'm not going to go there. It's no fun. And I'm said, that's because you're a nerd, because you're a dork. That's why. It was like great years for me over there. It's a great place to go. And I say the same thing about Indy. Yeah, you don't want to go there. Why would you want to go there? Bad weather, nothing to do. And then you find out just how fun it is here. Just like you do at Indiana State and Terre Haute, JJ. It's that simple.
I've only stopped at a liquor store in Terre Haute. It's one that had an all-sport vending machine. When I was on my way to my first ever Indy 500, I met some friends in St. Louis and we drove over. That's my only experience in Terre Haute, but I will have to take your recommendation up on it at some point.
It probably still had all sport in it too, I'd imagine.
Right? You know what? Maybe it wasn't expired. I didn't take the risk, though, of losing 75 cents on that.
Good idea. JJ Stankevitz of Colts.com. You do a ton of stuff at Colts.com about the present, the here and now of the Colts, certainly all that content. But you guys got something about the past that's up next here, don't you?
Yeah, it's a 4-part narrative podcast series that I wrote and narrated. It was produced by Casey Valier, our incredible work that he put in. Matt Taylor contributed, the voice of the Colts. Mayte kind of was like, hey, let me take on the music for all these episodes. So the story of it is the series is called The Move.
You got nothing but Tom Petty and Van Halen with Sammy Hagar, right? Is that what you got?
As he was doing it, I was like, we gonna be jamming out here, or what? But he did a great job with the music. Not stuff that he's listening to while grilling out and drinking a cold light beer in his backyard. But no, he did a great job of that. So did Casey with the work that he put in. But the series is called The Move, and it's available on the Colts Audio Network. Episode 1 is available right now. And it tells the story of why the Colts left Baltimore and why they wound up in Indianapolis. That's the narrative that we are going to follow over 4 episodes. And it's a story, John, that I think people think they might know, but as we went, dug and talked to people and did some more digging and looked through archival news footage and newspapers and went back and talked to more people, it's a story that I think I uncovered a lot that I had no idea about. Like, just these threads that run through this story that go well beyond, kind of what the narrative is in Baltimore about Robert Irsay. And, it tells, that's the episode 1, the one that's out right now, is all about Baltimore, and it's about the rise and fall of the Baltimore Colts. And for me, I wanted to start with Baltimore to set the story up, because we all know how the story ends, right? The story ends with the Mayflower trucks moving the team overnight in March of 1984. But I wanted to set the story up by showing just how deep the Baltimore Colts were embedded within that community and what they meant to that community, and to understand how that team leaving Baltimore still leaves a scar. That scar still exists. It's still a wound that for some people hasn't closed in 40 years. And I wanted to do justice to the story of the Baltimore Colts to begin this, to then tee up in episode 2, trying to do justice to the efforts of Bill Hudnut, Jim Morris, David Frick, the movers and shakers in Indianapolis who built the Hoosier Dome without a tenant, and the story of the growth of Indianapolis through sports. So that's in episode 2. The episode 3, which comes out in 2 weeks, is all about why the Colts moved overnight in 1984. And it goes into the concept of eminent domain, and that whole story. There's unbelievable stories I heard from Jim Irsay, Pete Ward, John Scott, Rick Venturi, from the night the team moved. Just, borderline unbelievable, but true stories that I heard from those folks who were involved in it. And then the final episode is all about the legacy of all of this and how the Colts set things up in 1984 on short notice and have built themselves into a pillar in this community over the last 40 years. So it's been a joy to put together. It's been a ton of work. I couldn't have done it without Casey Vallier and Matt Taylor. And I'm just excited that we start getting to share it with everyone here in Indianapolis now.
Yeah, Colts.com, JJ Stankevitz and our friends over there with that content that you can find again at Colts.com. JJ's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Did you know that I was at that first NFL game at the then Hoosier Dome? The Bills and the Bears played a preseason game. I want to say that was in August of 1984. I was there.
That's correct.
I was right there.
They scheduled that game in 1983 because the city of Indianapolis, kind of the folks who were organizing it, they thought when they were building the Hoosier Dome that the NFL was going to expand, and it was kind of almost fait accompli that the NFL was going to expand to Indianapolis, in 1982, 1983, sometime in that range. And then Pete Rozelle slammed the brakes on that. And one of the most interesting things that I've found out through this project has been the undercurrent that the Raiders have been to this whole move, to the whole reason why the Colts are here. There are a couple of different ways the Raiders are involved, not directly, but indirectly, that led the Colts to become Indianapolis's NFL team. That part of the story that is one of the most fascinating things that I think I uncovered through all of this is if Al Davis doesn't try to move the Raiders from Oakland to Los Angeles, and if the former owner of the Colts doesn't move the Rams from Los Angeles to Anaheim, maybe none of this happens. I mean, there are so many sliding doors moments in this whole thing that if one thing went differently, the Colts might not be here right now. It's just a wild, wild story.
Oh, it is, too. And, you really didn't feel that solid up until – the winning aspects of the Manning era, too. It was so unbelievable, JJ, and I remember this when it was first announced that the Colts were moving here, under the darkness of night, whatever. I remember the first time I saw Colts gear being sold at a Lazarus, that's a department store location in the Bloomington College Mall. It was surreal to see that. It was like a double take, a triple take. You've got to be kidding me. What you had known around here as the NFL was basically built around, the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Bears, to a much lesser degree, the Bengals. That's what everybody knew around here. Mm-hmm. And to see that gear in a department store like that was jarring in a good way. It really was back then.
And yet, I mean, this great quote from Pete Ward, now our COO here with the Colts, who told me he would look out at games in 1984 and the stands would be packed and it was, oh my goodness. And he said you'd see not but a speck of blue in the stands unless someone was wearing it by accident.
Exactly.
Yes. It took this city, I'm sure you experienced this, JMV. Like, it took the city a little bit to figure out how to be an NFL city. But look at us now. We have a season ticket waiting list. I mean,
it took you 20 minutes to get from Speedway into your seat at the Hoosier Dome for a game. There was no tailgating. People came directly from church in what they were wearing, penny loafers. Some of the ladies brought their knitting and did their knitting in the stands. It was incredible.
Yeah, and I heard too, if the Hoosiers are playing at 5, you had people leaving in the third quarter to make sure they're in front of their TV sets before IU basketball tipped off. And the way that this state has transformed since the Colts got here, from fans who, like you said, they knew the NFL, but they didn't know how to be NFL fans, to now being, to me, one of the best fan bases in the league. And I'm not just saying that because I work for the team. I'm saying that as someone who grew up and was raised in Chicago, who has come here and been like, holy cow, these are great fans. They're loyal. They're loud. They know exactly what to do in games. And, man, it's just an incredible story of how the Colts got here. And going through it and reporting it and talking about it has made me gain such an appreciation for this franchise and why they are here. And it's been such an incredible thing to be able to put together.
Yeah, I was at the August 11th Colts-Giants game and at the August 26th Bills-Bears game. I grew up a huge Bears fan. I was here, and And I became disgruntled, and especially once I started covering the Colts, I kind of moved away from it. But I can tell you anything you need to know about the Bears basically up until the beginning of the Eric Kramer at quarterback era.
Yeah, well, hey, you and I sound pretty similar in that I could tell you a lot about the Chicago Bulls up until the Derrick Rose era, and now, like, I swore that garbage franchise off, and I'm here to root for the Pacers, you know. But hey, real quick,
sure.
That first preseason game, the Colts Giants preseason game. Do you remember the halftime show?
Was it like Creedence Clearwater Revival or something like that?
No, it was. What was told to me was that it was 45 minutes long, and there were like Michael Jackson impersonators, but people didn't know that they were impersonators, so people thought that the real Michael Jackson was there. And it just, you know, so many different things from that '84 season are like that story. The final episode about the 1984 season, kind of the lasting impact of this, has some of my favorite stories in the entire podcast series. Like, I've got, you know, Larry Hall telling me that he had to like hand deliver tickets to some people before the Colts' first preseason game because they couldn't get the tickets printed in time because they started the ticketing process around Memorial Day because the team moved so late. You know, you got. One of the other incredible things that's in episode 4 that I'll kind of tease is Jim Irsay told me that he was given a bulletproof vest and a gun to put around his ankle because there were so many threats against him and his family before that first preseason game in 1984. And the FBI said, you need this for your own safety. So remarkable.
Jim Irsay had a gun strapped to his ankle like he's Kojak or something? Is that what he had?
That's what he told me, and you know, the threats were real back then. I mean, the first call that Pete Ward made after he was told the team's moving from Baltimore is he called the security company that the Baltimore Colts had on retainer after they almost moved to Arizona in '84, and I was like, you need to get here right now to go protect everyone who's in this building who's about to pack up an NFL team in 12 hours.
I got to hear more about the strapped Jim Irsay.
Yeah,
the ankle revolver right there. Yeah.
The way that I told it does not do justice to the way that Mr. Irsay told that story. It is incredible.
And we'll be listening to Colts.com. The podcast should be fun. That's JJ Stankevitz right there. Casey Valier and Matt Taylor will also be a part of it, and it is a look back on the arrival of the Colts. JJ, always fun to have on the show, man. Sooner rather than later, we'll be back with the pregame shows too, buddy. It's good to hear from you.
Already looking forward to those pregame shows in August, JMV. Thank you.
Take it easy. JJ Stankevitz on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I was going to ask him when the horse took a dump on the field. What year was that? Somebody can come up with that. James is like losing his mind. We got to break. And I'm trying to figure out when the horse dumped on the field. So hold on. I'm a little distracted, James. Hey, quick one, we'll come back. Stephen Holder at the top of the hour. Colts.com, you can find what JJ was talking about right there. Hey, stay where you are. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Dave Matthews Band Live. JMV.
Well, we're waiting.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
But it can buy me a boat. It can buy me a truck to pull it.
Yeah, I was at the first two. Colts Giants and the Bears and the Bills. I was a huge Bears fan then. Huge. Now everybody around here would hate my guts for it, and I haven't been for a long time, but... And it wasn't just, hey, the Bears of 85, let's be a fan. I go all the way back to when they drafted Walter Payton in 1975. I watched teams that had Wally Chambers. I had all the Sears gear. Was Bears. Anything. I had that robe. Anybody had the Sears NFL robe? What do they call it now? Fit. The Sears NFL fit was the greatest of all time. Yeah, pajamas and robes that would catch fire immediately, I'm sure, if they got next to a very hot light bulb. Oh, I loved it. Oh, the shirts. Seriously, if there were enough Sears locations around, maybe there still is a catalog, but if there were enough Sears locations around, I think that you could go old school with that NFL merchandise then, and it would be a hit. Look at everything else that goes old school, and immediately people snap it up. Some of the greatest NFL gear of all time you purchased at Sears. True story. Just look back at the catalogs of the past. Stephen Holder, top of the hour. Busy show so far. We'll recap coming up and give you a chance to talk to us at 239-1070, 5 o'clock hour, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Getting quality employees to fill positions.
Whoever you are, this channel is reserved for emergency calls only.
Lady, do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hey, Bobby Marks a little bit earlier. Good conversation. ESPN, ESPN.com, the draft coverage. Zach Edey. Matt Painter joins us tomorrow. Tom Crean later on this week as well. But Matt will kick things off. We'll talk about his former player and draft opportunities coming up on tomorrow's show with Matt Painter. So be ready for that. Bobby was really good. If you missed any part of it, that is 107.5thefan.com. And JJ Stankevitz, I do find a lot of that particular era and those moments in Colts history incredibly enjoyable. I want to say, was it 84 when the horse that they used to have a horse with the Colts running around on the field and it took a dump in the end zone? Was that then? It was great moments. When I say all the time that people had mentioned, over the course of the Manning era, the Polian era, that everybody just got, you just all you ever did is win, and you don't know how to feel without winning. And that's the way it was supposed to be after the way that it started, because I'm talking about some of the highlights right now. Like Raymond Butler being on the Alcoa fantastic finishes was like a great moment back then. Like a great moment. Oh, man, there's some Colt stuff. There's a touchdown against the Steelers. That's an Alcoa fantastic finish. Those were great moments. So there's a reason why people around here embrace the golden era, because to get there, to travel that path, it took a lot. Meantime, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, getting set for a bit of a vacation because under a month, the Colts will be active in Westfield for training camp. Stephen Holder joins us. Before we get into the Colts, I did want to ask you this. I don't know how you feel. I'm assuming you do because I know you like sports, and I know that you like basketball in general as well. I love the Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese rivalry. I love it. As long as it doesn't come with the other stupid crap, I absolutely love it. And I know that the Fever lost yesterday, but it was enjoyable to watch. It was fun to watch, and that rivalry is at the top of the list as to why that you want to tune in. I love it.
Yeah, okay, so two things. Number one, before I forget, you mentioned the Alcoa amazing moments or amazing finishes.
Fantastic finishes.
Fantastic finishes, yes. Okay. There is a whole generation of listeners that has no idea what in the hell you are talking about, and shame on them because they missed it. You just took me back to like 13-year-old me.
Yes. Yes.
I love that.
That's how we saw. There was a time, Stephen, when all we saw for highlights was Howard Cosell at halftime of Monday night. That was a time when we saw all the highlights, and you saw some of those big moments in highlights courtesy of Alcoa and those fantastic finishes. Nobody knows what it was like back then to try to get the content that is so easily obtained today.
100%. Yeah, no question about it. No, they were wistful days in a way, and then in other ways, we're really fortunate now too, right? So it just depends on your perspective. But yeah, man, I just wanted to say that was a moment of nostalgia for me right there. I love that.
James, find the sounder for Alcoa Presents Fantastic Finishes so we can play that before the end.
And you were like on the edge of your seat when it came on because like, who's it going to be? Who's it going to be this week, right? I get it, man.
There was a moment around here with the Colts that was the lone highlight of the Colts. That was it.
Oh, man.
I think it was against the Steelers, and it was an incredible catch and touchdown run. Do you have here? Okay, here it is, Stephen. This is the Alcoa Presents Fantastic Finishes.
Alcoa presents Fantastic Finishes. 1967.
I love
Unitas and the Baltimore Colts trailed Green
How about
Bay
that? Alcoa presents Fantastic Finishes. Beautiful.
No, man, that was well done. Well done.
Raymond Butler, I believe, too, was the wide receiver that got that notoriety. Ray Butler, I believe, back then. So that was the lone highlight of the Colts, basically up until I think that like Monday night game on Halloween. That's how long it took.
That's funny. Well, anyway, you mentioned Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. I'm glad you brought it up because, number one, I've covered a fair number of the games this year, just being in Indy. I mean, I'm the only ESPN reporter like in the state of Indiana. So they've had to call on me a few times this year, which I was happy to do. And so I've kind of gotten into it, and I have been watching. And I covered last week's Sky and Fever game. So I was there for that and for the flagrant foul as well and all the fallout from that. And then obviously watched yesterday's game. So I've been definitely attuned to the situation. I agree with you. I think this is fantastic for the sport. And look, if you don't like women's basketball, that's fine. Like, you don't have to explain yourself. I mean, I don't. There's sports that I don't watch. I don't watch hockey because, like, I grew up in Florida. Like, what the hell am I going to do watching hockey, right? But even though I get it, right, the Panthers in the cup and all that. But the point is, you don't have to like every sport. It's okay. That being said, I do think, why do we watch sports? We watch for competition. We love the drama. We love the action. This provides that. This rivalry provides just that. And regardless of what the two of those individuals think of each other, I think they respect each other. I don't think there's some kind of cat fight going on between them. Are they best friends? No, but I don't think that necessarily matters. But that being said, there is clearly a rivalry, right? I mean, they have played – when they have played, it's been with a lot on the line. And that can go back to the Final Four a couple of years ago. So it all started with that, and it's basically the same genesis of the Magic Johnson, Larry Bird rivalry. It started in the exact same fashion. I'm not saying that this will wind up being the same as that historically. I don't know. We'll see. But in the moment right now that we're in it, it feels a little bit like that. I don't think that's over the top to say that. This is a big story. Name a bigger star in sports right now than Caitlin Clark? There's not that many in this given moment. So being that as the case, this rivalry with Angel Reese is a big deal because Caitlin Clark's a big deal right now, and so is Angel Reese, obviously. So I don't think we're overplaying it. I don't think we're making too much of this. I think it's a big deal, and I think we're treating it appropriately. I love it.
This may sound incredibly silly, and that's okay because I often do that right here between 3 and 6. Stephen Holder joins us now. How about if Converse would come back with a weapons product run and utilize, like they did Magic and Bird, Clark and Reese? Would that gather any steam, especially nostalgically speaking, for the Converse? And I don't know if you can do that. I don't know if that were to happen. But that's kind of where we found out that these guys had more than just a rivalry going. They had some common ground, and they all of a sudden started liking one another back then when they shot that in French Lick, that commercial, and then had the series of commercials. It'd be cool. Would it be cool to try to recreate it, or would that make it silly?
I actually liked how you're thinking there. I think just generally speaking, some smart company should probably try to capitalize on this whole, whatever you want to call it, rivalry, feud, whatever name you want to assign to it. Maybe some smart company could capitalize on it. I mean, you could even go to the McDonald's ads with Bird and Jordan. Right, off the scoreboard, off the roof, right, over the backboard, right? I mean,
no, that'd be the Fever trying to lay the ball up right there. That's what that would be, except they'd miss it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, they weren't the best of friends, right? And they had a rivalry of their own, right? So, I think that's why that worked. And you talked about the Converse campaign, right? I mean, that's why it worked, because they were not supposed to be the best of friends, and they were supposed to have this rivalry. So you know what? Somebody in some corner office somewhere on Madison Avenue, they should get right on that, to be honest with you.
Stephen Holder's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. We shall get with the Colts in just a second as well. I'd mentioned this since you've been covering the Fever oftentimes there locally. Yesterday I thought was another example, and while people look at Caitlin Clark and the turnovers and blame her teammates, and oftentimes it's right there off their hands, I think decision-making wise, often if you're Caitlin Clark, and a part of making good decisions is knowing who you can throw it to and whether or not they can catch it, then convert. Well, you saw that at the end of the game when they came up with that loose ball and went down the floor. Like, I was looking for her to maybe hold and maybe get a secondary part of a drop-off break right there instead of pushing it forward to Wallace, who had no chance in hell of making that finish, and obviously it went down like we thought it was going to go down. I think oftentimes these great passes she makes because she is in front of the game itself, and that's cool, is not good in terms of how her teammates are responding. And then I think that makes it a bad pass when the likelihood of a teammate catching it or converting is so low with some of these chances.
Yeah, you know what? I don't disagree with you at all. I think there's some truth to that, and it's a blessing and curse, okay? She is incredibly gifted from the perspective of court vision and understanding of the game, right? And as you point out, not everybody is on that level. Sometimes she is seeing things before other people see them, other teammates see them. She doesn't see that they should make that cut, even though it's the right play. They may not see it as quickly as she does. She has an incredible vision that she's blessed with. So I do think, yes, you do have to kind of understand that and govern yourself accordingly. There's no doubt about that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I also think that, as you said, maybe she should have held on that situation where she pushed the ball. She kind of only has one speed, and it's go, go, go. And sometimes that's not always the right play. The reason she does it, I understand why. It's because that's where she thrives. She thrives in the up-tempo game. And she doesn't want the defense to get set because that's how she gets off those long threes, all that stuff. So I get why she does that and why she plays that way and so aggressively. But it doesn't mean that it's always going to work, and sometimes it's the wrong play. So, it's kind of a pick your spot situation, and she has to do a little bit better job of doing that. She is getting better at it, though, I will say. Still too many turnovers, but I'm starting to see, I think, smarter decisions coming more often. And I think that's what has to happen. If she kind of eliminates just a handful of those bad plays per game, I mean, you're talking about the potential for scoring a handful more points, and they're losing close games in many cases, right? So that's how you can close those gaps. So I agree with you. I think that's all part of the maturation, and Caitlin has to grow into the player she's going to become.
Yeah, and I think about this too. This offense could move quicker, and part of what they want to do is go inside, and that's great. But you can't have one of these bigs, whether it's Boston, who's been really good lately, or Smith, take 8-9 seconds to figure out how they want to go at the basket. I mean, you dump it inside, and it's tick-tock, and you don't have time. If they get stoned defensively, there's no opportunity for a kick out. I think their offense, and maybe this is on the coach, and this is something you can be critical of Christy Sides about. You want to see this offense not get so stuck in the mud, even when it's playing well, because more times than not, it's not going to end well for them.
Yeah, I think here's the thing. I'm fine with posting the ball. That's fine. But if it's not there, there's nothing wrong with kicking it back out and keep moving the ball. Whatever you do, the ball, wherever you go with the ball, it should not get stuck. It should not stop moving. And that's where they run into a problem sometimes, I do think. So, it's fine. They can play through the bigs at times. That's fine. I mean, they have talent there. I get it. But I also think there were moments late in that game yesterday where I'm like, Caitlin should probably have the ball here. Yeah. And so,
and all this is going to catch up to the coach too. It all naturally is going to catch up with the coach, and that's the first one that's going to be on the hook for it.
Yeah, and it starts there, and it's an evolution, right? And they are still kind of learning to play together to some degree and all that, but you got to anticipate where your problems are, and I do think there's some things that she can iron out. There's no doubt about that, and I hope that they will here in the coming weeks.
So Stephen Holder of ESPN, ESPN.com covers the Colts and the NFL on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. So are we hearing too much love that's being handed out right now before we know too much regarding Anthony Richardson? Because that is kind of the cool thing to go with right now is, Anthony Richardson is going to be a game changer once he gets back out there. A lot of people nationally kind of putting the proverbial cart before the horse on this, or is it all okay?
It's an interesting question. I think that it's such a unique situation. I'll answer the question in a second. But I guess what I'm saying is I get why that's happening, because you saw the flashes last year. There's no doubt about it. They're undeniable, okay? The problem is they are flashes. And so I guess you have to decide how big of a sample size do you think that was? Was that a small sample size? Was it enough? Do you need to see more? And I think that depends on the individual. I kind of fall into the standpoint of I thought they were very compelling flashes, but consistency is what this game is about, particularly at quarterback. We just talked about decision-making and that kind of thing, right? I mean, he still, is going to have to complete a fair number of passes. He's going to have to be consistent on a down-to-down basis. Those are not things he did last year. They're just not, okay? And you know me, I'm a big Anthony Richardson guy, but I am not going to sit here and tell you that he threw accurately, consistently, or that he always made the right decision, or that it was all even, right? It's a little bit more roller coaster with him, right? It's up, it's down, it's down, it's up. Now, that's true for the overwhelming majority of rookies. So that's why I don't necessarily get head over heels about it in a negative way, because that's what you expect from a rookie. So we'll see. I just think that the good thing he has going for him this year is that it's kind of his rookie year, but he got a fair amount of playing time in those 4 games or whatever it was, that he has something to build on. He has an entire offseason that he had last year. He had an entire training camp, and he had actual regular season action. So he is ahead of the curve, but he still has a lot to prove. There's no question about that. It's okay to say Anthony Richardson has a lot to prove. You can still be high on him and say, I need to see more. We all do. The Colts do too, right? But they're confident. But there's a difference between being confident and saying we know what we're going to get, right? That's not the same thing. And I think that's where I'm at. I'm confident. I have high expectations, but it's show me, don't tell me.
Non-injury related to, who had the most disappointing season a year ago that really needs to show you something different and certainly something more positive this season?
Good question. Excuse me. I would say maybe this is mean and maybe not fair, but Alec Pierce is going to define who he is as an NFL player this year, I think. For better or worse, right? I have a story coming out about him, and it's not groundbreaking necessarily, but there's some stats in there that I thought really, I think, drive home what he was dealing with last year. I mean, this guy played an incredible amount of snaps. The production was just not there, and some of it was his fault, some of it wasn't. But the bottom line is, we're 2 years into his career, and we're still arguing about what he is. And I don't even think we're close to really having a consensus. So that tells you a lot about what kind of season it was for him. And so I just think we're going to find get some more definitive answers about who he's going to be this year. The reality of it, though, is that he's probably going to play a lot less. I mean, A.D. Mitchell's going to play. I don't know what the snap distribution is going to be. But Alec Pierce playing 90% of the snaps doesn't seem likely, right? So, or whatever the number was last year, it was extremely high. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how he responds to that situation, and just how he, how is he going to grow up a little bit? He's going to have to this year. So we'll see there. And then I think beyond him, I don't know. I think everybody else. I mean, Mo Alley-Cox is interesting. I feel he's a little boomer bust sometimes, and so can he be a little more boom and a little less bust sometimes? I don't know. We'll see. But he's a guy. You asked non-injury. Obviously, lots of injured guys, but non-injury. Right. I think he's a guy who. All right. Is he what we think he is, which is just a guy who is a serviceable player, or is he possibly more than that? I mean, maybe he's just that. Maybe he's just a serviceable player, and there's nothing wrong with that. All I'm saying is, I think there are those among us who are still kind of waiting for what's next. And all I'm saying is, well, maybe there's nothing next. Maybe that's what he is, right?
Yeah, and see, I think we've seen it, and this is injury related, but I think that's why Jelani Woods is a must. He's a have to, considering what they didn't decide or they couldn't decide because their target went a little bit early in the draft. That tight end position is going to be something you're going to want to get production from, and we've seen the level so far. Maybe Ogletree adds a different layer to this as well, but I think it is a lot of the focus on Jelani Woods to become what people thought he was going to become a year ago, and nobody saw him.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bit of pressure on him there. I mean, I wouldn't say a lot of pressure because he is coming off an injury, but the pressure comes from the fact that it kind of has to be him. You know what I mean? And that's what I kind of think. I mean, it's not pressure in terms of you were drafted really high and now there's all these expectations. No, it's not that. It's just, I mean, they don't have a proven guy at that spot beyond Mo Alley-Cox. It has to be Jelani is the guy they're counting on to take a big step and become a real weapon at that position. I was down in Nashville last week at Tight End University, if you know what that is. This is the event that was conceived by Greg Olson, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and basically it's a tight end summit. And they bring together guys from across the league, and they work on they watch film. They have a couple of days of workouts on the field. Matt Hasselbeck was out there throwing to him. Dak Prescott was down there throwing to him as well. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is because I look on the field and I look at all these guys and I'm like, man, there's some damn good tight ends in the league. And I'm like, there's probably 25 teams out there that feel like they have, I think a more accomplished tight end than anybody on the Colts roster. That's such a deep position in the NFL now. What the Colts have is they think they have numerous options, but they don't have one single guy who's really proven is the difference, So it'll be interesting. I mean, there were teams there. I mean, there were teams represented where they had two good tight ends, two proven tight ends. I mean, if the Eagles come to mind, for example. So it'll be interesting. I mean, everybody else in the league has really found consistent and accomplished, or not everybody, but a lot of teams at least have found accomplished playmakers at that spot. The Colts are still trying to get there, I think.
In closing, I want to get back to the shoe conversation we had just a little bit regarding the Converse weapons outside the non-Jordan division of signature shoes, athletically speaking. What's your favorite of all time? You can't say Jordans.
Yeah, obviously that's fair.
Right.
The one that's had staying power among basketball players, at least. We're talking basketball. Kobe's. Now that's a newer one, right? I wouldn't say that's not a classic necessarily, but Caitlin Clark, she wears Kobe's. Kind of interesting, right? And I think I notice a lot of basketball players, NBA, WNBA, whatever, if there's one shoe they wear more than any, of signature shoes at least, I think it'd probably be the Kobe's. And there's many versions of them, but Kobe, signature shoes. So I think it speaks to a couple things. Number one, everybody loves the guy, right?
Yeah.
And then, they also have like some shoes that were really popular and they were big sellers. So, the players gravitate to those as well. So I don't know. I might be the Kobe's, but I would say back in the day, good question. It's funny. I was never really big on the Converse. I was never a big Converse guy.
Not even the Dr. J. The Dr. J's were earlier than the Weapons, if you remember. Everybody kind of gravitated to the Dr. J Converse before anything else.
Yeah. I vaguely remember them. I'd have to Google them to really get a.
How about the Akeem Olajuwon Etonics, which were like wearing a shoebox on your feet?
I remember those really vaguely. Yes.
Here's another one too. The Dominic Wilkins Human Highlight Film Brooks.
I did not know that one.
Whereas the Brooks now may be the most comfortable running or everyday wearing tennis shoe out there. Those were the most uncomfortable basketball shoe of all time.
That's funny. Yeah. Oh, you know the one that I forgot. I'm not saying it was my favorite, but it's an iconic one. The D Brown Reebok pumps.
The pumps, yeah.
The Reebok pumps. I mean, that's an iconic moment. D Brown pumping up the shoes in the dunk contest. I mean, now that's a remember where you were moment, right? If you're an NBA fan. So
like that,
I got to throw that on the list.
Like that time, I don't think anybody ever touted these. That time, somebody for whatever reason got me to buy a pair of Lottos, which were terrible.
What is even a lotto, right? Where'd that even come from?
Look up Lotto sometime because they're as uncomfortable as they are ugly. Yes, Lotto.
I'm very familiar with them, but I never could figure out like who's the market for these, right? Who are they marketing these? Yeah. Apparently you.
I don't know. I think me and Vanilla Ice were the only ones to ever wear them.
I don't know if you're in good company there or bad company, but you have company. Put it that way.
All right. You're off on vacation next week, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Buddy.
I am off, and I am going to far-flung places, so I'll be back soon, though.
All right. Hang in there, and once you get back, we'll be that much closer to Westfield, Indiana, Grand Park.
Before you know it. Yep.
Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'll see you.
Yeah, and Stephen Holder on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Anybody else out there have Lotto? Did you have Lotto? British Knights? I know Todd Meyer had British Knights. Actually, I know what Todd Meyer had. Todd Meyer had ponies. Ponies were incredibly popular back then. Way back then. What do you got here? James, what do you got? Tell me what you got.
I've got that Dr. J Converse commercial.
Okay, play it. Let's do it.
Hey, Dr. J, where'd you get those moves? You move with such grace. Are you a member of the human race? Hey, Dr. J, where'd you get those moves? You're an artist, you're a wizard, and you blow up in air. Everybody's wondering, how'd you get there? Whoa. Hey, Dr. J, where'd you get those moves? Are you wearing magic shoes?
He's wearing Converse, the shoes of the stars.
Outstanding right there. You remember, right? Todd, you remember when Jerry Seasting was on the show and I asked him about the Converse that he wore in Boston, and he purchased white ones but got a marker and colored them green. Yeah, for the Celtics right there. It's good stuff right there. That's awesome, man. Thank you, Todd Meyer, the executive producer, for that throwback Dr. J Converse commercial. All right, me and my Lottos. What the hell was I doing with Lotto back then? But there was a moment where it was a big deal. It was I think me and Vanilla Ice may be the only ones in Lotto. Quick one, we'll come back. Final 30 at 239-1070. If you want to hop on board, the AAA Membership Lounge, that's YouTube Live, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
In the construction business and tired of dealing with the
on the stool because he's under 5 feet tall.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
James over there, I'm John. Thank you for joining us. The Alcoa Fantastic Finishes was awesome right there. JMV, do you remember the expansion bid for Major League Baseball 82 to play in the Dome? Remember the name of the team? I believe that was the Indianapolis Aeros. And the person that spearheaded the attempt was a former boss of mine, the owner of Artistic Media Partners, who unfortunately is no longer with us. That would be Art Angotti. His son, Artie, runs Artistic Media Partners now. And I saw them, this was years ago, I saw them at a Pacers game, and in Art, who had a very unique way, well, not of talking, but a unique sounding voice, approached me along with Artie and said, I hear you like to make fun of me. Yeah. Back then, had gear and everything back then, which was pretty cool. But yeah, ultimately with Cincinnati and St. Louis and the Cubs and the White Sox, there was no way that was going to happen. Kevin writes this. Do you know what PONY stands for? I believe product of New York, is it not? I think there was a point in time when it became like the shoe of porn, too. Look that up, James. James saying what? PONY at one time was, and I'm not a wrestler, I wasn't a wrestler, was I think the official shoe of wrestlers everywhere. But I think it was product of New York. And at one time in recent history was like a shoe brand name in porn. Or unless somebody just told me that story and I ran with it because I find it so interesting. Is it true?
I haven't seen anything yet.
Well, I'm just making it up.
You might
That's
be.
good. You know, if I'm going to make up a story, that's a hell of a story to make up. T. Shaw writes this. What would be considered the tough skins of old school shoes? That would be, I believe you got these at Sears too, if you ever purchase school shoes and clothes at Sears. Would that not be the Winners 2? The Winners 2, along with Zips back then, or another shoe brand name called Pro Keds. I think occasionally you could get that at Tom McKinney. Or, I'm sorry, Tom McKinney. Tom McCann. Sorry. Jack McKinney. Tom McCann. But the Winners 2, I want to say, was the brand name shoe that you got at Sears. It had the tread that ran up in the front and like up over your heel in the back. Then, of course, for those of you that I would assume at the time were unlucky enough to have your parents say, you know what, you don't need the Adidas. Here are the tracks. That probably at the very beginning certainly was probably not what you wanted to wear going back to school. Yeah, instead of the Adidas, I got the tracks. Kmart. Yeah, very true. JMV, I definitely had the Pony City Wings. That was a poor man's Jordan. Yeah, I went through all those. And this was after, obviously, the Air Jordans took off. You had, and I'm probably missing some, but the ones that stood out, the Akeem Olajuwon Atonics and the Dominique Wilkins Brooks. The Brooks shoes right now are among, what do you got, Brooks? What's the other one? Hoka? Is it Hoka or Hoka? Whatever the hell that's called. Everybody has those now.
Hookah?
Is it hookah?
Well, that's what Hooka.
Is that where you smoke?
Yeah, that's a smoking thing.
No, these are shoes. You don't smoke them. But it seems like everybody has a pair of those now. You have a pair of those, you have a pair of Brooks. And Brooks, arguably the most comfortable shoe out there, the everyday shoe, the running shoe out there. Meantime, you go back to the era of the human highlight film, Dominique Wilkins, And those were among the most uncomfortable basketball shoes ever produced. And that is saying a lot. Because I thought the Barkleys, once we got into the 90s, went well beyond that. That would be the heaviest shoe all time. Anybody ever wear the ankle weights to try to improve your vertical? If you ever wore the ankle weights, that's what it feels like. It feels like wearing the Barkleys, you're playing in Timberland boots. Very heavy. Yes. And Walter Payton had the kangaroos with the pocket. You got to put your key in that pocket on the side. The zipper pocket. One of these days, I got to get his son, Jared Payton, back on the show. I want to know how much that Walter Payton ended up getting out of kangaroos back then. LA Gear knockoffs of the Reebok pumps. I had the very first Reeboks that I can remember here in the United States. That was the black, the all black that had the Velcro, I should say, strap on top. JMV Brooks and is it Saucony were the best running shoes out there. And everybody's got those Hoka. Hoka. Rocking those right now. Well, very true stories. JMV, I heard you with Bobby Marks a little bit earlier, too. And I would agree with you, and Bobby did as well, regarding this team with the Pacers. I think it's okay if you have not so subtle changes, but keep everything mostly the same, because you got a little bit of time to do that now and a little bit more time to decide whether or not this is going to work once you get into the season. And that has been my angle so far. I for the life of me, don't understand why all of a sudden you see these guys turning into good players and you want to trade them. I'm all for winning right now. I just happen to think you can win with these guys. I happen to think you can win with these guys and win now. All right, 239-1070. We'll take some calls before we bail here at the top of the hour. Bill can start us off. Hello, Bill.
JMV, how you doing today?
Bill, I'm great. How are you, sir?
Man, I spent the whole day at a public pool, and there's a tradition that goes on that's been going on for decades. Is these kids playing Marco Polo? Have you ever been to a public pool?
Yes, we have. Well, I grew up with an in-ground pool. We called it Fish Out of Water, which I think was the Greene County country version of Marco Polo. Fish out of water. We would yell, fish out of water. No. Fish out of water. No. It's like Marco Polo. It was the redneck version.
Yeah, it doesn't get it. It's not bad and everything, but after about an hour or so, it gets to be a little irritating, I'd have to say. But yeah,
do they still, like we did back in the day? Do you like swim underneath dudes and like blow bubbles up to identify that somebody's below you, but you can't get to you? Is that still the way you play?
I think that's a third-class misdemeanor on the east side here nowadays.
Hey, why are you blowing bubbles? Blowing bubbles up my rear end here in the pool, man. It's 1984. Come on, go ahead. Yeah.
Man, I tell you, you mentioned the ankle weights, and when I played high school basketball, our shoe was the high top black Chuck Taylor All Stars, which was just like a piece of canvas on top of some rubber soles and everything. But I wore the ankle weights, and I'm regretfully saying and everything. I think that's why I'm getting both my knees replaced now.
I used to wear the ankle weights. They were Everlast ankle weights because they were meant for boxers, and I would wear those and lay on the couch. That did a lot of good.
Yeah, yeah, that would increase the vertical.
My vertical did not increase with that.
But hey, man, I'd like to see how Andrew Nebhart's going to do in the Olympics this summer.
Me too.
I think that's going to tell a lot about any other ancillary moves maybe the Pacers would have to make. But USA Canada, I don't know how they're going to be seeded. I don't know when they're going to be playing. But I hope that those two teams are slated so that they're playing each other right around the medal round.
Hey, Billy, in closing, this pool today have a high dive?
No, they took it out.
We take all the high dives. Are they all gone now?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's no fun.
Not at all.
Man, the kids these days have no idea what we got to enjoy.
Yeah, and the sissy cannonballs nowadays are more like EVs. I mean, it's just nobody knows how to do a can opener, a cannonball, nothing like that.
I'm assuming they don't do this any longer. In Bloomington, they used to open up on campus the diving boards and the platforms outside. That's right over. It used to be right over by Assembly Hall. That pool used to open, and they would let you jump off the highest platform, the diving platforms. There's no way they allow that today. None.
Not now. And not now. They don't have enough insurance to actually do that.
I love the high dives were the best, man. That stinks.
I know it. I want to mention one thing that's happening here in our state that people aren't taking notice of is that there is a species of squirrel called the white-tailed squirrel that basically is located in Olney, Illinois, and they've migrated over to Indiana. And I've got a picture of one. But the white-tailed squirrel looks like a skunk with a mink coat on. And if you get a chance to see one, there's a bunch of them around here now, and they're going to start proliferating. So now we're going. Well, and also the Olney High School in Illinois, the Olney High School, their school name is the Olney White Squirrels, Fighting White Squirrels.
And I believe the squirrel is a marsupial, correct? Is that a marsupial? Or not?
Yeah, it's that, but it's basically a rodent.
Okay, well, yeah. Would it be named anything else without its incredibly erratic behavior when you're driving next to it, when it runs out on the road, like right in front of you? I mean, it's one of the more appropriate names of anything ever, right? Squirrel, because it's very squirrelish in its behavior.
Oh, absolutely. And when the squirrel gets right in front of your car and you're going towards it, they just stand there and look at you, and you just got,
very erratic behavior.
You're underneath the Michelin at that point.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate that. Let me take a quick break. We'll come back. Whoever's on hold, we'll get to them. I may be wrong. That may not be a marsupial. Squirrel. Like she runs out in front of you. It's right in front of you. Hey, I'm going to stand here, and then, you're going to go this way. I'm going to go that way. Nothing's more appropriate with a name than a squirrel. We have nothing to give away today, do we? Yeah, I did see this, and this is maybe more for tomorrow, and it's not going to happen. And I know how much you guys dislike him, but Bobby Portis on this team and the way that they play, just get beyond. If he were on this team, he would be your a-hole, right? Just get beyond that for a moment. I think that Bobby Portis would be a fantastic player for the Pacers. Am I wrong? He's not going to be. They're not going to get him. But now that you've heard maybe the Bucks are willing to look for another spot for him, you ever thought about it seriously? Would he not be good as a part of this team, the way that's constructed, the way that this team plays offensively? All right, quick break. We shall return. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Dave Matthews Band Live.
That attended the Counting Crows show last night and won via this show. Did you get the opportunity to ask Adam Duritz if he remembers the time that we took a whiz to urinals right next to one another in the Viper Room back in 1994? Anybody ask him that last night? That had to be a big moment in his life. Big moment. And there was so much going on. This is the Viper Room in 94. I have no idea how they saw. Look at this Indiana driver's license. What county are you from? Greene County. Yeah, come on in. I think the cover charge was $10. I think they made me pay $50. Now, wait a minute. We can't let your hillbilly rear end in here. You got $50 on you? Yeah. I want to say on that particular 1994 evening, I think it was during the week, too. Check that. It may have been on the weekend. Anyway, I think L7. Remember the female alternative hard rock band L7 was on the stage. Me and Adam Duritz went next to one another. They're very clean bathrooms. They weren't so much up on at the Viper Room than the cleanliness as they were doing drugs in the stall. It was a big deal. 94, I believe that was. But hopefully if you won tickets and you saw the Counting Crows last night, you enjoyed the show. And you enjoyed the show on us. More to come, by the way, too. Joe's at 239-1070 next. Hello, Joe. How are you?
Good. How are you today, sir?
Joe, I'm fantastic. Yeah, you got it. Go ahead.
I don't hate the Bobby Portis idea thing at all.
It's not going to happen, but it's just kind of interesting. Right. I think that he would be a really good fit to this team. I do.
The thing, it's every time we make it deep run, the reason we lose is rebounding. I want somebody that only rebounds. Your two big guys can't only average 7 rebounds a game, and you expect to win when it matters. I believe that's their biggest problem. They've got to get better on rebounding.
You are not. I think 7.5 to 8 rebounds a game is going to be basically the Miles high water mark. However, you don't want to compromise. You keep him because of what he can also do and provide offensively. You don't want to compromise that. But here's my thing. I think you become a better rebounding team if you're better defensively on the perimeter. I just think this team is completely hosed offensive rebounding wise. They just can't do it.
I agree. But I need even the defensive, the second chance points in the playoffs. And I hate bringing up the 96 Bulls and all that, but 98, they couldn't rebound. Offensive rebounds killed them. Second chance points always kills the Pacers in the playoffs. They got to improve that. And I agree with perimeter defender. They got to get somebody that can guard the ball. Thanks for taking my call.
And it's going to be that guy. These guys right here, too, Joe, the guys that are presently on the team. Jeff, to close it out at 239-1070. Jeff, thank you for the call.
Hi. You guys were talking about buying shoes. I know everybody buys some shoes sometimes because of whose name on it.
Yes.
I can remember in the mid-'90s, I didn't buy a pair of shoes because of the name on it. It was Patrick Ewing. I could not wear shoes in the mid-'90s with Patrick Ewing's name on them.
I remember the Ewing shoes, too. You know, it's funny. I think I wore about everything. And obviously my favorites are the initial Air Jordans. Those are great. The most comfortable basketball shoe I can remember of that era would have been, and this is what IU wore, the Adidas Top 10s. But when Adidas came out with the Forums, I thought that those at the time were the most comfortable to wear basketball shoe out there at the time. It was just me. So
I'm fairly old. I remember growing up, I was wearing Red Ball Jets.
Yes, you were. Yeah. There's no doubt about that, man.
I think it was the only option.
Yeah, probably between that and the Chuck Taylors, that was probably it. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Jeff,
have a good weekend.
You too, man. I'm going to have a hell of a week and then have a great weekend. I'm going to have it all. James, you say we're giving something away later on this week?
We are giving away tickets tomorrow through Friday.
For? We can't announce it yet?
I'm not sure if we can or not.
Well, that sounds suspicious. We going to give away ponies? The official shoe of porno?
Probably not.
Where did I get that, man?
I don't know.
I'm sure I remember that being I just wouldn't make that up out of thin air.
I was kind of scared to Google pony porno on the computer over here.
Bobby Marks, thank you. Podcast, you don't want to miss that, 1075thefan.com. Holder was here, so was JJ Stankevitz. Tomorrow, head coach of the Boilers, Matt Painter. I believe Tom Crean later on this week as well. You guys don't want to miss a second of the summertime of this show on 93.5, 1075 The Fan. AAA Membership Lounge, YouTube Live. Great job today, too.
Doc, I don't know what's wrong with me. All I think about is football while staring at the calendar.